Hello and welcome back to my channel and to my BBC Shakespeare retrospective. And now we've reached Henry VIII. This was the last play in the original first season of this series, and it turned out to be the most expensive. The director Kevin Billington decided to shoot the whole thing on location, all at locations that were something to do with Henry VIII's life. They were basically Leeds Castle, Penshurst Place and Hever Castle. I've been to the first and last, the two castles. I've never been to Penshurst Place. And they are beautiful. It's very wintry, this film. And it looks very cold. The actors look very cold, but that somehow adds to the texture and the feel of the production. And the interiors are very unadorned and they're shot in a very low light. Unlike, for example, the recent Wolf Hall adaptation, which looks very sort of filmic and nice. It looks too nice to my eyes. This one looks sort of a bit daggy and a bit down at heel, which somehow adds to the atmosphere and the medieval feel. But it was a very expensive production. And because of it, apparently, the rest of the productions in this series were all made in the studio, which upset some directors, as I'm sure you can imagine. It's ironic, really, that this production was the one that bankrupted the series, as it were, because it's for a play that, frankly, is not very well liked. This play came right at the end of Shakespeare's career, and by common consent was mostly written by John Fletcher, and you can kind of tell it's not Shakespeare's best work. In fact, I'll be honest with you, I didn't really know the play going into watching the production. I studied Shakespeare at university and I read pretty much all of them. This was one of the few that I didn't read, so I was going in as a virgin, as it were. And it is not a great play. It's a very odd play. The structure is peculiar, and I think this is something to do with the fact, I've not really studied this play, but I get the feeling that this play is working really as a piece of propaganda. We have to look at when it was written. It was written in the early 1610s. So Elizabeth I has died. James I has come into power. And what you've got to understand is that we've had almost a century of religious persecution and terrible turmoil. Henry VIII, of course, was part of the Reformation. He turned the English church from being Catholic into Protestant. Then Mary, who later on was going to succeed him, was a Catholic. So then there was all sorts of troubles. Then Elizabeth I was a Protestant. You know, this has gone on for hundreds of years. So this play is almost a play of reconciliation and moving forward. So it has to sort of go on tiptoes about how it covers the period of Henry VIII and how this all happened. And it does it in a rather odd way. It structures the play around four victims. It doesn't concentrate on Henry VIII and Anne Boleyn. That's the framework. But the people who take up the narrative are people who fall foul of this change in the British system, or the English system, I should say. So first of all, the play concentrates on Buckingham, the Duke of Buckingham, very well played by the excellent Julian Glover, who is this kind of random victim of machinations, mostly by Cardinal Wolsey, who's a kind of moustache-twirling villain through the first part of the play. And he's kind of one of these kind of sacrificial figures that you sometimes get in Shakespeare plays to put into relief the corruption and the venality of the higher-ups. So he gets executed. And then we move to the second victim. Now, the second victim is Catherine of Aragon, Henry's Catholic Spanish wife, who he was with for some time. He was with her for about 20 years before he went on with Anne Boleyn. And she is portrayed very, very sympathetically. And what's interesting is she has the most audience sympathy in the whole play. She has the most presence in the play. That's an indication, I think, I'm not a scholar, but I'm going to put it out there that it's unusual in the tragedies, Shakespearean tragedies, for a female character to have so much of the weight of the narrative. I wonder if that was somehow Fletcher's angle, you know? And Claire Bloom plays Catherine of Aragon quite brilliantly and dominates the whole production. She steals it from everybody else. Then they get rid of her, and then the third victim turns up, and rather improbably, The third victim is Cardinal Wolsey himself, who for the first half of the play is the real villain. You know, he's sort of this thorn in Henry's side, right? But then he gets sort of deposed. And then this is the sort of reconciliatory nature of the play, that it has to also be kind of kind to the Catholics, right? So then we see that the tragedy of Wolsey, that he sort of realises what he's done wrong and he reforms. He's played by Timothy West, who died recently. I think he died back in December. An actor I never really liked, I'll be honest, partly because of his sort of quality and his persona. He eats up the screen as the moustache-twirling villain, but he's much better in the fall of Wolsey. Then his acting chops really come to the fore, and he's very good, actually. And then we get the fourth victim. And the fourth victim is Cranmer, right? And he is played by a wonderful character actor called Ronald Pickup. But Ronald Pickup, really, he gets the poison chalice here. It's a terrible role, Cranmer, because all he's done is he's put on at the end, and, you know, he's the kind of, this is the conciliation towards the Protestants, right? And he gets to deliver this panegyric to Elizabeth. Right, it's a pure propaganda speech, and it's kind of toe-curlingly embarrassing. And poor old Ronald Pickup, it's kind of like the climax of the play, and he has to deliver it, right. And you can hear this plane buzzing through the sky outside. Not only that, but baby Elizabeth starts to cry, and you can see that this poor actor, surrounded by the entire cast, Ronald Pickup, is trying to deal with a crying baby. He's got a plane outside, and he's got this really boring propaganda speech to deliver. Fair play to the guy, he makes a good crack at it. So it's a very strangely constructed play. And Henry VIII, excellently played by John Stride, very good character actor now forgotten, but he's almost an incidental character. And because they don't want to criticise Henry VIII too much, they sort of, he just becomes this kind of figure who's almost his own victim of circumstances. He's the victim of Wolsey's machinations, he's the victim of his own sort of passion for Anne Boleyn, but he's never kind of criticised, nor is he ever lauded, really. He's just the king. It's a really odd, queasy type of position for the actor to do it in. I mean, Stride does the best he can with it, but it's not like Damian Lewis in the recent Wolf Hall programme. Very different character completely. Anne Boleyn is played by the absolutely beautiful Barbara Kellerman, but it's not a very great part for an actress. A much better part is that played by Sylvia Coleridge. Sylvia Coleridge is a wonderfully dotty character actress. I always look forward to seeing her turn up. And she plays Anne Boleyn's companion, her kind of nurse. And she has a couple of really great comedy scenes. She's well worth watching out for. Other actors to look out for. Now, if you've watched this channel before, you know I have a little obsession with an actor called Louis Fiander. He was a character actor at the time. He was often thought to be a very bad actor, and apparently it didn't get on too well with some of his cast and crew. I think he's very good here as Suffolk. He's got a very unusual quality, Louis Fiander. I'm kind of fascinated by him. He's got a bit part here, but he plays it very well. He's got an interesting aura in the role. John Nettleton, a very good character actor. You remember him from Yes Minister. He's excellent as the Chamberlain. It's also the only production I've seen where Charles Lloyd Pack and Roger Lloyd Pack are in the same production. You remember Roger Lloyd Pack from Only Fools and Horses, Trigger. He's in this playing a sort of gentleman who comments on the action, a kind of chorus figure. And his father has a very brief role at the beginning. So watch out for that. So what we've got here is a pretty terrible play and an absolutely brilliant production. This is the best production you'll probably see of this play, and it might be the best production in the whole BBC Shakespeare range. And so I'm kind of glad of it. I'm glad it was done. I'm glad this play got a one-time really brilliant production, because it's hardly ever been performed before or since. I probably won't watch it again, but I'm glad it exists. Thanks very much.